So hey guys, it's Ziant again, and today I want to talk about remakes. In particular, I want to talk about the remake of Final Fantasy VII in its original form that IGN and GameSpot and all the big major gaming journalism sites talked about. Like I mentioned in my gaming history series, I am a Final Fantasy fanatic. I love the series, I love the stories it has to tell, and for the most part I enjoy the characterization. However, I think that in the last few games, they've really dropped the ball on quality. And for a long time, I've wanted them to re-release Final Fantasy VII in an HD form. In the PlayStation 3 tech demo 5 years ago, Square remade the initial opening of Final Fantasy VII, the bombing mission. And everyone thought, oh, they're remaking Final Fantasy VII, yes, finally! I was one of the people who was equally excited about a Final Fantasy VII remake. Making gamers even more adamant in their desire for these remakes are the HD collections that are coming out, most notably Shadow of the Colossus and Ico and Metal Gear Solid. And for a long time I thought, well, why not just do what they're doing with the Final Fantasy series? But that was until I read an interview with Hideo Kojima of Metal Gear Solid fame. And he talked about the difficulties of remastering the Metal Gear Solid series. What I hadn't counted on was the transition from a 4:3 aspect ratio to a 16:9 aspect ratio. One of the main things he was talking about was the fact that in 4:3 there are certain things you are not able to see, and in 16:9 you will see perfectly. And so a lot of levels have to be redesigned so that parts of the map that you shouldn't be able to see at that point in the game are not in fact visible. And this idea was reinforced when I started playing the Pokemon remakes, Heart Gold and Soul Silver. The screen on the DS is so much larger than the Game Boy Color that they had to completely rebuild the entirety of the world map. So even though the core game data is the same, essentially, the entire interface has to be rebuilt for a new platform. And with Final Fantasy VII, the same would be true, but on a much more massive scale. Not only would the world map need complete reconstruction, every single area, which was essentially just a background in the original game, would have to be rendered in 3D. Not only that, but all the characters would have to be motion captured, these cutscenes would need to be rebuilt. Everything would have to be redone from the ground up, minus essentially the dialogue, and you would need voice actors even for that. And so as much as I might want a complete rebuilding of Final Fantasy VII, that's not something Square has the time or wants to put in the energy to do. I don't even think it would be a good business decision, all things considered, because as much as people love Final Fantasy VII, things have changed in the RPG and video game industry as a whole. So when I heard about the fact that they were simply re-releasing the original game with a few minor tweaks, my initial reaction was, well, this is stupid. But then I got to thinking, retro games will always have a niche that people will want them to fill, and it makes good business sense simply to retool a couple of things and re-release a game in its original state for a new audience. While you can't please everyone, there is a large population of Final Fantasy VII fans who I'm sure don't want an HD remake of that game. Things over at Square have changed, new employees have come, there have been prejudices that have been built up because of new employees and what have you. In the end then, the best decision Square could have made was the one they're making. They're not changing the core game, they're not adding voice actors, they're not re-rendering any of the cutscenes, changing any of the dialogue, the combat mechanics, any of it. They're simply re-releasing the game we all know and grew up with and love in its original form. So do I think remakes are a bad thing? No. However, I only think a game should be remade and or remastered when it is practical and good for business to do so. And I think my next Battlefield video will restart the Gaming Future series. I hope to see you all there.